What is going on, guys? Jack here, and welcome back to episode number 31 of Primera here with Racing. Yesterday we ended the season, today we've got a transfer special, but before we get into today's video, it goes without saying, if you didn't see yesterday's episode, it was a mad one. There were 4 teams separated by 3 points, 3 matches left of the season. We did them all live, and while you rejoin me here for the award ceremony, I thought we'd do things a little bit differently to end the year. So yes, the plan today is to kick off the transfer special. We are going to have a review of the squad, who performed well for the year, and then we're going to get into some transfer business, and depending on how we get on, may do another transfer episode tomorrow as well. Let me know if you'd like to see that down in the comments. I know it's a little bit unorthodox to do the back-to-back transfer special, but I think this is going to be a really interesting transfer window. It's going to be a big one for us for sure, as of course, I'm now going to assume you know what's happened. We made it to the Champions League, and well, we have, I think, a few of our new signings to thank for that. And well, if we saw the new transfers by average rating, it's worth noting that Alessio Bessio is leading the way. Although we did just sign him and he's just played in the B team all year. Does that really count for anything? I mean, I'm going to claim it does. He's got 23 goals in 38 games. He's not a bad little player, the 20-year-old. Hopefully he can develop a tiny bit. The kind of player who, of course, bringing in on a free transfer, if we can sell him on for some profit, which you'd say based on his current season, we probably can, to be fair, he's going to look like a pretty good transfer. But he's not one of the ones who contributed to the first team this year. One of the men who contributed to the first team this year is Fabian Vélez, of course, the young Colombian, signed in January. Was kind of a big deal transfer. I feel like I hyped this one up a lot. Did he live up to the hype? Kind of. I mean, look, 2 goals, 2 assists, a 7.13 rating for a player who's only just turned 18 kind of in the last 6 months. Is pretty phenomenal. He's obviously got to improve a fair bit in terms of his technicals, but both his mentals and physicals for a player of his age are just great. I see him as the long-term solution in at centre-back. And you know what? Despite being late to the party, he put in a very, very good year for us. Anana, of course, another one of our centre-backs that we brought in who did very, very well by all accounts. The kind of player who I'm kind of surprised at how well he's done playing centre-back, because he's obviously accomplished there. He's not natural there, but he really stepped up to the plate this year. A 7.03 rating for him, although I think when he played centre-back, he had like 7.1-ish ratings. 7.06 in the end. Okay, it tailed off a little bit, but nevertheless, he is the kind of player who I look at and go, yeah, you're going to be useful for the next few years at the very least. A player who is definitely Champions League quality. And well, between those two centre-backs, for the first time, I think, since we started here at Racing, I don't look at the centre-back position as an area that we absolutely have to improve. Of course, Jose Marsa came in and had a pretty good impact, as did Huadro. These two chaps played a lot of football between them, and whilst they didn't get a load of assists, they contributed to a really solid defence that was definitely a platform for our season. Basia and Ferry, kind of good squad players throughout this year, frequently coming on off the bench. Blanco, Avramides, players who I think they've got plenty left in the tank to give. Of course, Blanco has come in, he's played out as our box-to-box midfielder. He's a real natural leader in the team. And at 23 years old, I do see him as the kind of long-term midfield general for us. He's got loads of room to improve. Hopefully, we're going to see that development that we've seen throughout this year continue. But no, he's looking like a really inspired piece of business. Of course, he was picked up on a free transfer from Real Madrid. And if we just scroll further down, Avramides developed a lot over the course of this year, continuing to develop now. Very easy to forget. He's only 19. He's got his best years ahead of him. And in fact, he turned 19 last month. So he is a young player with a really, really bright future. Yeah, I'm very excited to see what Avramides can achieve for us. Anyway, of course, there were plenty of other players who came in. Not many had huge impacts. I guess maybe a tad disappointing, Atakovic, who joined us, of course, for £16 million. That's a lot of money for a player who didn't really perform too well. But again, it's a long-term signing. We're playing the long game with a player like Atakovic. At 19, you know, was in the shadow of Pablo a little bit. Maybe didn't get as much first-team football starting as he would like. The big headline really is he's continued to develop, and he can now play centre-attacking mid, which is the position I've signed him for. Of course, that was a position he couldn't play a few months ago. If we look at the end of season results, you can see here where we finished up 4th place. We sold out our stadium on the regular. Mexica, was he really the whole league competition top goal scorer? I need to check this now. Was he? No, okay, he finished behind Martial. He was our top goal scorer in the competition. I get it. But But an A+. It's been a great year. There's no denying that. We went on some really good winning runs. We definitely had rough patches, and towards the end of the year, I mean, it was not pretty, but despite nearly bottling it, despite winning 3 games in 10 in, some really late games, we hung on in the end, and kind of by virtue of the fact that everyone else was slipping up equally, we've managed to get 4th place with a points total that ordinarily wouldn't even necessarily get you Europa League football. I think we've been a bit of a beneficiary of, circumstance in that regard. From a financial perspective, of course, the sale of Pablo was the big kind of headline. £40 million we sold him on for. As you can see here, we've made some good merchandise sales. Mahika's shirt selling well. Blanco, Avramidis, Onana, and Atakovic. Imagine buying an Atakovic shirt in January. You're all excited about him joining, and then he gets 1 goal in 15. Yeah, I'd have question marks about those fans as well. I'd be upset if I was one of those fans who got that shirt. Anyway, in terms of how we lined up this year, Machedo, I talked about Veyes and Onana. Machedo was great this year. I think he's earned the right to be our goalkeeper, at least for the foreseeable future. Really, really good with the ball at his feet. Great passing. Just a solid goalkeeper who I feel like has improved a lot. He's kind of player who there was question marks over him last year. Even the year before, wasn't 100% sold on him. I think he's silenced a lot of his critics this year. He has been really, really good for us. Obviously, Pablo Torre and Mahika doing well. Mahika, I'm just a big fan of Mahika. I think he is a great forward. Is he a Champions League quality forward? I mean, we'll have to wait and see. But certainly for us this year, he has been a difference maker. I feel like if you're going to have a successful season overperforming, you need 1 or 2 players who you can just rely on for goals, and Mahika was that man for us. Of course, Bicho got injured towards the end of the year. Martinez slotting in out on the right-hand side. A few of you guys mentioned in the comments, maybe I should be training Martinez to cut in from the left-hand side. Maybe I should be training him to play on the left as an inside forward, even though we currently play with a winger there. And I kind of agree. Like, he can already play naturally out on the right. Obviously, the more positions a player plays, and the bigger variety in those positions, the more it eats up their current ability. You can have like a really versatile player, but they won't be a specialist in any one kind of regard. So if we are going to train him to play on the left, we've got to be aware of that. But because he can already play on the right, it's not as taxing as, say, if we were to train him to play centre attacking mid more naturally. But all in all, really great year. I really am enjoying watching the 4-2-3-1 play. I think it's worked really nicely for us. I look at this team and I think, get a new left winger in, maybe get in a new right back. Of course, Huardro only in on loan this year. I'd love to renew his loan. And we'll be in a really, really good spot going into the new season. Anyway, you can see the accolades here. Pablo Torre, Fans Player of the Year, Young Player of the Year. Veyes won Signing of the Year. Mahika's just really, really good, isn't he? And it's been a weird year. Like, the highest average rating's only a 7.1, which isn't very high at all, really. When you have a successful season, I feel like you usually have 1 or 2 players kind of in the 7.3 range, but it's been a season where individuals have stood out on their occasion, but no one's been kind of a consistent player who I can look at and go, you have been the difference maker throughout this year. Anyway, you can see the season review here. I mean, it was a great year. We were one of the feel-good stories. That's what I want to see. In terms of plans for next year, the league, the board want a mid-table finish in the league. I think I'm just going to accept that. We're going to be playing through the Champions League qualifiers early next year, so that's going to be another aspect that we have to kind of juggle with. I'm going to tell the players that we're going to aim for a mid-table finish next year. I feel like it's sometimes difficult to kind of, I suppose, manage expectations when it comes to these meetings. When you come to these meetings, sometimes I feel like you have an idea in your head of what you think is possible, and none of the players agree. I find generally the best advice is just to go with whatever the board suggest. Tell the players that that's what you're going to aim for. Anyway, you can see the season report here and the team report. Apparently, Avramidis is our best striker. I mean, when you look at his polygon, it does look blooming impressive. I'm still hoping he's going to learn to play out on the right-hand side for us and be a really useful player out there. There is a world in which I could see him becoming a pretty decent winger to an extent. You know, he's right-footed. Is there a world where we switch around the winger and the inside forward and maybe swap around the centre mids? I mean, it's not going to be the most detrimental change, really. It's just mirroring the current formation. I guess the question then would be, is Marsa as good as Huardro going forward? Also, on Huardro, can I sign him permanently? Can we have a chat? You know, 104. Okay. How about we just renew it for a year? How about we just renew it for a year? And end of next season? First bit of transfer business done. If we can get Huardro down for another season, that would solve a headache, because he has been a very useful player for us throughout this year. Anyway, I get to choose where we're going on our training camp. We're going camping, everyone. I want to go to England. Let's go home. My home, not the player's home. In fact, do we even have an English player in this team? This must be one of the first save games ever where there's no Englishman in my team. I hadn't even thought about that. Mahika, he got top goal scorer. How did he get top goal scorer? He got 22 goals, but when I go here, Martial got 25. Okay, someone's going to have to explain that. I don't understand it. It's gone over my head. I mean, answers on a postcard if you know what the hell is going on. I've not won manager of the year. I've been absolutely robbed by Martino there. That is a disgrace. Also, Mahika gets in the team of the season. You've got a sea of Barcelona players. Toni Kroos is sat there, and then just Mahika up front. I mean, that gives you an idea. Maybe Mahika is the man that we've leaned on the regular this year. He's been quite good, to be fair, hasn't he, the striker? So going into this new season, it's going to be very difficult. It's going to be a challenge, that is for certain. I feel like we've got a young squad with some really exciting players who I want to bed into the first team. But equally, the squad depth is just not there. We're going to have a more intense year this year. I look at players like Tony Herrero, now aged 23. He was great for us when we were in the second tier of Spain. He was pretty usable. He's not a terrible player by any accounts now, but you kind of look at him and have to go, is he good enough for where we're going? Is he good enough to be the backup left-back in a Champions League squad? I'm not quite so sure. Players like Bruno Paz as well, very, very similar. Great player, signed on a long-term deal when we got him in. Obviously didn't pay a great deal of money for him last year. This year he's played 3 matches. These are players that I think we're going to have to do some spring cleaning with, potentially move into the under-23s. The current first-team squad size is 27 players, although Ivan here is out on loan, of course. Ivan, the centre-back, a player who I had such high hopes for. I still have high hopes for him. I mean, he spent a year out on loan, not really playing enough. I have talked with the Vallecano manager on a few occasions, telling him to play Ivan more. Again, he probably, I'm going to be honest, he can probably go down to the under-19s at this point. And then these chaps here, I mean, it's nothing personal, but you are B team quality now. Apparently, I did not. Is that a rule? Okay, we're learning about how B teams work here. I mean, can Herrero go? Can you go? No? Okay. Well, they will go down to the B team when they can, because, I mean, the B team is kind of useful. I'm hoping the B team are going to get promoted into the playable leagues. I'd like to follow their own little adventure as they hopefully get to the second tier of Spain and can sit there. Okay, so basically, there's going to be some players that we move out of the squad here. There's going to be some players that we move on. Of course, Pablo Torre is still here for 1 more year. When I look at the current squad, despite Hardy's heroics this year, I see him as being a useful player to have on the bench, but not really sure he's good enough to be a starter for us. A ball-winning midfielder, I like Fernandez. I certainly don't dislike Fernandez, but ultimately, is he good enough for a Champions League club? No, he's not. So this is kind of I suppose the dilemma that we're going to have to deal with here. I could move Onana forward and bring in Basia. I like Basia. I think he's a good squad player. A bit like Mahika. There's a lot of players in their mid-20s, players who have been let go of by other clubs that we've taken in and who have actually developed a little bit. He's a player who I don't think he'll be starting for us. He could well end up on the bench, to be honest. Speaking of which, let's just clear the bench here. So if we're looking at this team saying we want to be competitive in the Champions League, I think the defence is good, to be honest. I think Mars has been solid. Longer term, he's probably going to need to be replaced, but at 22 years old, young Spanish player, lots of potential, consistent, loves big matches. Similarly with Huadro, who maybe not quite as good defensively, but still a massive, massive kind of, talent, a great athlete. A player who's really technically gifted as well, who I think offers us a lot going forward. Onana and Valles, don't want to touch them. Machedo, don't really want to touch either. I suppose the bizarre thing is, Mahika was a player who at the start of the year, I feared if he didn't perform, we could be in trouble. I'm now in this situation where it's like, I don't really feel like I need to replace him all of a sudden. Of course, we've got Torre in for 1 more year, but we have also got Atakovic kind of coming in and, developing nicely. I mean, you can see the head-to-head comparison here. It's kind of bizarre. You look at the polygon, you'd think that Atakovic is the better player, but you can kind of see by the underlying statistics, Atakovic, when we've given him chances, he's not shone quite to the same degree. Of course, this year, we're going to play way more matches all of a sudden because of the Champions League. Maybe Atakovic comes in, for Pablo Torre on the regular. But I do think the left midfield position is an area of concern. Bicho had moments of brilliance this year, but at 28 years old, he's very, very injury prone. He certainly goes missing in big games, and I think that left-hand side is an area where I'd like to improve. I mean, we've discussed the possibility of maybe playing Avramides as a winger. I mean, you look at it like that, and you'd say, like, as good as he is cutting inside, he could still be a really, really good winger for us, and maybe that would suit him more. So is there a world where we flip things around? Does Blanco have a side preference? He doesn't. I mean, maybe this is the approach. Maybe the thing is, if I'm going to go with this, do I just throw in Martinez, or do we just view Martinez as this super sub who can play both sides? I really like Martinez. I want to give him game time. I know he's got the mentals of a teacup, but some teacups, they don't need good mentals. They have a good handle. They're steady, great physical complexion, technically gifted with good ergonomic design. Why am I comparing Jonathan Martinez to a teacup? Basically, I like him. I don't want to stomp over his chances at first-team football this coming year. So having done a quick clean-up of the first team, kind of working out players on the bench, I think this is where we're at. I think we need a new defensive midfielder. We need a player who can play out on the left, potentially. I'm going to sort out the rest of the roles as we go here. I've got the current formation saved. But yeah, I think they're the two first-team spots. And then in terms of on the bench, I like Basia. I think he's good as a backup centre-back. You know, he played 13 games as a starter this year. Came off the bench 9 times as well. I feel like players in Football Manager who come on off the bench with 20 minutes left, so consistently those performances end up just being 6.8s because of the way the average ratings work. The fact they can't really get into the games. To be honest, I've been pretty happy with Thomas here when he started. In terms of the midfield, I think we're okay. You know, Jordan Ferry, he's got, I think, 1 year left on his contract. Perfectionist personality. He didn't have a super standout year by any means, but he started more than half of our league matches this season just due to some of the rotation we had to do. I look at players like Jonathan Martinez, you know, bright future, product to the academy. We want to see him thrive. Hardy as well. You know, was solid enough this year that I think I can look at him as a solid bench option. That said, you know, depending on what options are available, if we go in for some players, he is a man who might find himself a little more on the fringes of the first team this year. Of course, this season we've not had many injuries. There's not been too much rotation. There's a few players who have been on the fringes who haven't really had an impact this year, who I think we are going to ultimately ship on. Of course, Atakovic looked really, really solid this season. You know, and we need, I say that, he didn't look solid at all, but we need to keep faith with him. At 19 years old, he needs game time to develop. On paper, he should be class. He's coming to a new country. He's learning a new language, unlike Avramides. I saw you comment section yesterday. Yeah, I really, really like the look of Atakovic, and I'm confident he will come good. We've just got to be patient. Sometimes you can't rush art, and he's an artist. So with that team kind of plotted out, these are the players on the fringes, players who, I mean, in many cases are players who were here when we were in La Liga 2, who going into next season, I think we need to replace with a bit more depth. Gabels this year, we signed on a freebie. He's not happy with the first team football he's been playing. He's had a few long-term injuries. We brought him in for free. Honestly, I think the best course of action here is just to try and sell him on and see if we can get anything for him. I think getting in a backup, more natural striker probably is on the shopping list. Someone who, if Mahika gets injured, we can rely on. I don't think Gabels is that man, especially with his injury history. Paz was great a few years ago. He's just not good enough for us now. So I think the culling can begin here. Of course, Subasic, I could renew his loan for another year. Say his loan. He's not in on loan. In fact, I can't renew his loan. When did he agree to leave us? He's going to the United Arab Emirates. I mean, I didn't even know that was happening. When did that? I mean, am I living? I can't move him to the. Like, he's not here. He's not here. He's gone. Siracco was brought in as an emergency signing at one point when we had a long-term injury to Subasic. He's not very good. I mean, as a third-choice goalkeeper, he'll be fine. We are going to need a new goalkeeper, that is for certain. Bicho is still injured with this broken leg. He could still be out for 3 months. So I'm probably looking to replace Bicho, but I may not be able to sell him on. Comas, his loan spell is finishing with us. He was just a squad option from Barcelona. He's moving on to Getafe permanently. Of course, Pooch we actually got for 1 more season. He played a handful of games for us. I thought he would be the player to kind of compete with Torre, especially if Torre's head was turned by the move to Bayern Munich. Truth be told, he's not been particularly good this year. I would love to give him more time. I'd love to give him more chances, but he did start 7 games on off the bench, Torre was just kind of impossible to drop in the end, but he's here for another year, so there's no point in cancelling that loan. I think at the very least he acts as a squad player. He's getting the first team football that we promised. Rojas, of course, we signed a couple of years ago now. I don't really have any complaints with Rojas. He's just very, very average, but as a fifth choice centre back going into next season, I think that's a squad status that I'd be fine with. In the case that we have 3 first team injuries to centre backs, having him as the fifth man to come in, I think is kind of perfectly fine. We've talked about Herrero. I could move him to the B team. I'm sat thinking maybe we just try and get a little bit of money for him and see what we can do. And then, of course, Kofi we brought in this year because he could play right back and left back. Again, I just didn't have injuries this year. So there's all these players who I'm looking at going, I don't think you're good enough now, but I have no idea how you would have done this year if you were given a chance because you were just never given that opportunity. But I think the most logical thing is to just try and move these players on. Of course, the challenge is going to be the fact that they've not played any regular first-team football, so quite how they're going to get on is impossible to know. I think we just have to trust our instinct and trust the attributes that we see and assume that, for the most part, the players are going to perform to them, even if you do get those outliers, where sometimes there are just players that seem to outperform what should be expected of them. Rodrigo Fernandez is a perfectly good squad player at 23 years old. I have no qualms keeping him in the team. And then we have Cabanzon, who, if we're going to bulk up the wide areas, if we're going to sign a new left attack in mid, he is going to find himself further down the pecking order. That said, he is homegrown at club, and that is something I haven't really given much consideration to. Because we are going to have, of course, the Champions League going on. We're going to need 4 players who are homegrown at club. So with that in mind, we're probably going to end up keeping him around, to be honest. I think that is just going to be absolutely necessary. That said, I mean, he's okay. If he was 18, I'd be way more excited about him, but ultimately he is 21. I suppose the only other approach would be, if I wanted to get rid of Cabanzon, is, who are the youngsters waiting in the wings? We've got players like Arca here, or Arce. Let me know how to say his name. Abraham. We'll go with Abraham. He was not a bad little player at all. At 17 years old, he came through in one of our first intakes. Quite what potential he has, I don't really know, but he looks kind of serviceable. Of course, we've still got players like Peterson, who we signed start of last year for like £85, thinking, we're a La Liga 2 team. We could be here for a few years. He's not good enough for us right now, but he's still only 18. You forget how young some of these players are when we end up signing them. Resende had a really good loan spell last year. I suppose the counter-argument to signing, a backup striker is, we do just have Resende here, and he's played on loan this year in the 3rd tier of Spain. And yes, it's the 3rd tier of Spain. It's a massive step below where we're at now. But he has developed quite a lot. I don't find always loan spells are particularly successful in Football Manager. I mean, when you compare him to Mojica, there's really not a world of difference. I might just bring Resende back. He's only 21. He's got lots of... You know what? Resende, I've had a love-hate relationship with Resende in various Football Manager save games, but I think we can put some faith in him. I mean, to be fair, the team's got a load of youngsters here who are very exciting. Jorge Calderon, I kind of want to give game time to. I kind of want to promote him. Would that be mad? He's got great potential. Although he's only got 2-star current ability, I think he is the best youth player that we have. Of course, coaches' summaries are not always accurate. I don't agree with them. I look at this guy and I just think, you could be a really good centre attacking mid. Is that mad? I don't think that is that hotter a take, is it? I think playing him out on the wing would be a bit of a waste. I hope I'm training him. I am, okay. I was about to say, I hope I'm training him as a centre attacking mid, because that's certainly where I think he belongs. Yeah, he looks really, really solid, to be fair. We're training him as a shadow striker because it gives him a lot more attention to his physicals, which are a little lacking. And even if he ends up being a winger, shadow striker is going to help with those physicals. I'm going to move him to the senior team. I think he is good enough to contribute in some capacity, especially compared to other players like Aguilera here, who, I mean, allegedly have the same kind of current ability. But, I mean, when you compare them, there's levels to this game. I think Jorge Calderon is just on another level and kind of worth looking at. Okay, I can't quite believe how much I've talked here to start this video. I think doing 2 transfer specials back-to-back is almost going to be necessary at this point. But at the same time, I really enjoy this part of the season in Football Manager, a deep dive, talking about where my headspace is at, with different players, talking about the squad building. It's something that I've not necessarily done a ton in other series, because I've never really done transfer specials like I've been doing them with this one, but I do enjoy them, and for the most part, these are videos that you guys like to watch, so I'm sure there aren't going to be too many complaints if we don't get quite as much transfer business done. We've got a new stadium being... Oh, okay, this is perfect. New stadium being built. That is bloody good news. It's not going to be a smooth process. We don't have any of the plans for it. But there is a new stadium that's going to happen. Could it be named after a legend? Am I considered a squad legend yet? I'm not. I'm still in favoured personnel. I almost feel a little offended by that. One thing I forgot to mention last episode is in May, so like 2 weeks ago, May, we got the kind of permission to improve our training facilities, our youth facilities, and our youth recruitment. Obviously, we've got all this money in the bank. It's not very cheap improvements. I think it came to around £6 million for all three of them. But as a combination, it's something that we need to constantly stay on top of our facilities as we progress onwards and upwards. And yeah, I think it's going to help us longer term to kind of get where we want to go. Anyway, before we get into the season, we need to sort out some transfer assignments. I also need to remember we've got Puado joining us as a striking option. Forgot that was happening. And we've also got Willy Cambuala, who... at 19 years old, I think he's going to be a really good centre-back. I forgot we had these two guys going. And we've got Huardro, who might also be joining us from Manchester United. They're like becoming our feeder club or something. Right, before we go any further, I do actually want to set up some assignments. Now, normally, people sometimes ask, Jack, what assignments do you normally set up? With this save game, I've not been too on top of it, but I think it's going to become more and more important. One of my kind of go-to ones is just to set different continents. So, for example, South America, player type. I'll sometimes put it as hot prospect. You can see what that sets up here. Or I will add it myself. So you can go here, kind of potential. I'm going to complain here, Football Manager. These are star ratings, everyone. So star is 5 stars. Excellent is 4.5 stars. Superb is 4 stars. It's just... it's not a great system, like this terminology. Generally, I like to look for players with superb potential if I'm looking for hot prospects. I don't need to know about every single South American under the sun, especially with our current kind of transfer restrictions in Spain, where we're only allowed 3 non-EU players. So we're going to set this up. Pedro Mendes, probably not the man to send. Let's go with Mosquera here, because he has a bit of knowledge of South America. And we are going to set him to go ongoing, and that just means he's going to go out, flock the nest, and do that for the rest of the kind of end of time. Anyway, let's go with this next one. We are going to be looking for a left-sided player who plays in our 4-2-3-1. They need to be first team ready. That sets their current ability to good. And in terms of area, let's go continent Europe. Of course, not every country considered in the European region is an EU nation for the sake of our registration rules, but we should be fine. Elsewhere, we need a defensive midfielder, please, who fits our system. First team player. We'll set this one on ongoing, I think, just because the defensive midfielder position is an area that I feel like you can always improve, and it is really important to our current system. I'd love to get kind of a long-term player who we can lock into this spot and is just going to do the bits for us. Anyway, I've got all these other scouts not assigned. They've just been doing a general focus, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, to be absolutely clear. Like, they will actually suggest some pretty good players, like this guy who looks bloody good. Maybe not what we need right now, but what I'm going to do quickly is I'm just going to set up, and I won't show you all of this, but I'm going to just set up a load of scouts to look for hot prospects, just kind of whoever is free, ongoing. And I will just do this like during the season. I'll probably send a few to Europe rather than just one to Europe. And I'll just set them covering the region as a whole. Not kind of some mad science to it all. It's a big shotgun approach. Basically, just bugger off to every corner of the universe. Come back with players with potential that you find. Okay, so I've set up the assignments. We've got a load of scouts just ongoing, looking for players across Europe. A couple bit more precise, looking in South Europe. One is going to be looking in Europe, but also Spain as an added focus. Mikel Gonzalez, you are our Spanish scout. Go find me people in Spain who are good. I mean, he's got good adaptability. Maybe I should have sent him abroad. It doesn't matter. The assignments are set up. It's going to be a big summer for this. So this is kind of more important than ever, I think. Now, before we get into looking for actual players, I've just had a look at our scouting centre. We've got a load of players who have been suggested to us. there's interesting players here. This guy called Lima, 19 years old, good potential. Wage demand's not the smallest. I wonder if all those players who kept rejecting us to go to Portugal are now going to be interested in us. I'm still not over last summer. I hope those players regret not joining us now. There seems to be some pretty good players here as well. A load of Colombians. Are we just going to end up with a team full of Colombians here? You've got Rodrigo Palacios, who's 19. Great work rate. Physicals aren't too bad. He's not the quickest player for a fullback. Can play defensive mid, which is kind of interesting. He's not got the aggression of a ball-winning midfielder, but he's not lacking a great deal else. Bad adaptability, though, could be a little bit of a problem. Not entirely sure he's what we need right now. There's also Renteria here, who is the guy we already looked at, so not interested in him. I mean, who's recommended the highest? Kylian Charlot. I don't know if that's how you say his name. Sounded good, didn't it, though? He plays for Toulouse. Is he considered their hot prospect? He's not. Sergio Mbala is. He looks not... He's not it, is it? He's not it. So one of my favourite filter setups to use when just looking for young prospects in a save game, as well as going through national teams manually, is just to look for players who have age at most 20, international caps at least 1. We're looking for players who are already breaking out into their national team. And occasionally here you'll see some really, really good players. Sorting by value is one way that you can do this. The other way that I like to do things is searching them by world reputation. You get some really, really interesting players that pop up, you know, like this guy who is playing in Egypt. He's 19. He looks really, really good. Don't know if I want to use one of my non-EU player spots on a backup goalkeeper. There's a Estonian guy here who's 19. He looks pretty solid. 17 vision, 16 passing. It's weird how when you look at the polygon here, you'd go, oh, he's not much of a playmaker, but actually that's because he's got free flair. And flair, passing and vision are the three things that go into this part of the polygon. So even though it looks like he's not that creative, because you just look at his vision and think he's not, playing a role like a deep line playmaker, where flair isn't even a factor, you can see he's really, really good at that role. But you wouldn't know that. You wouldn't look at him necessarily there and go, deep line playmaker. I think one thing that's useful to do, and I don't even know if there's a learning resource for this, and I'm not sure how I retain this information, is to work out what attributes go into what areas of the polygon. So, for example, physicals is agility, balance, strength. Aerial is just jumping, reaching, heading. Defending, I think, is tackling, marking, and positioning. And some attributes don't go into any of them. So there's some players who look really bad when you look at the polygon, like James Ward-Prowse, who, if you actually look at his overall ability, is really good in Football Manager. I don't know why James Ward-Prowse is the example I've used, but he's one of those players where if you looked at his polygon, you'd go, he's awful. He's actually very good. A bit like Bykov here, although not who we need right now. So a few of these players have actually been scouted by me, so I just sorted by kind of current ability to see what we've got. There's a guy called Men Ming here, who is a Chinese striker who's got a lot of goals at international level, and he's wanted by Real Valladolid. I'm wondering, if we sign him, I mean, he can already speak Spanish. If we sign him, are we going to get loads of shirt sales? That's, in my head, that's like one of the reasons to sign players from China. You know, you get that population, you get the shirt sale boom. I don't actually think it has that bigger effect, though. There's also this guy, Katarski, who plays for Dynamo. He's got 1 goal on his debut at centre-back. He's injury-prone and not very adaptable, though. I don't need a centre-back, although he's good. Jose Domingos. Now, I said I didn't want to replace Machado, but he's 19 and he's Angolan. I've never had an Angolan player. If he has part Spanish, part French nationality, because he's playing in France, that would mean he doesn't use a non-EU player spot. Oh, how much to lose? How much to lose? Tell me. I don't want to have a sell on, so we'll remove and exclude it. He has an active relegation release clause of 21 million. My transfer budget's 11 million. I can't sign him, but he's really good. And this is why looking for players just through national teams or players who are capped at youth level is very, very useful. I really want him. Maybe. Look, we'll make a bid and make it non-negotiable. And we're trying to get our business done earlier. I'm going to declare an interest as top target. He's just been relegated with Toulouse. Like, kick off. Kick off. Get unhappy when they reject our offer. I'm sorry, friendship might be ended with Machado here. I'm sorry. Okay, they've rejected our first offer, but we'll up it slightly. You know, we're being reasonable. They've told me that 3 million is unacceptable. I'll give you 3.4. Take it or leave it. Right. What we should probably do is, as fun as signing all these young players would be, there are certain positions I do actually need to address. So maybe we should look at them a little bit here first. So defensive midfielder. I mean, are there any good defensive midfielders that we've scouted? I guess that's the first place to start. Rasmus Drenzler. Yeah, he's injury prone. I don't like it. Hugo Garay. He's a very playmakery type player. Trigo. He's good. I mean, he's 18 years old. He's available for 325k. I mean, even if he's just a signing for our B team at that price, it feels silly not to go for him. Also, Jack's tip of the day, if players have release clauses, you can just click on the release clause and it will set the fee in the top right to the release clause. And you can just click on their value to set it back down. I'm wondering if they're just going to ask for the release clause. They are. Oh, I might just go for him just because he's there. I mean, that's not a great justification for signing a player, but it's what I might go with. There's Roman Becke, who apparently is available for 2.3 million. He's 17 years old. Again, I've not set up my scout assignments before this year, but you can see just by having scouts looking for players, they will just find good players along the way. This guy's really interesting because he's got such good mentals. How would he be as a ball-winner midfielder? He needs to bulk up a little bit and he needs to improve everywhere, but he's 17 and he's got a minimum release clause of 2 million. What about if I just give you 500k? Thing is, if I was a Premier League club and I had Premier League money, 2.3 million is a drop in the ocean. I need to put on my cap that reminds myself where we are, who we are, what we're doing. We are a team that have £11 million to spend, and I have first team positions to solve. Right, Jack, let's look at players to start with who are transfer listed, just to see if there's any bargains out there. It's right at the start of the window. There's a Paraguayan player who's transfer listed. He's got good mentals. Playing for Sevilla. He's been playing for their B team. He's really, really good as a ball-winning midfielder, isn't he? But he's inconsistent. Well, I need first hit, Jack. Stop it. Sort by current ability. Okay. There is no one transfer listed who's particularly good defensively. There's a few players here, though, who we can take a look at. Of course, I am playing with attribute masking off for YouTube. On Twitch, I sometimes play with it off. I sometimes play with it on. To be honest, I find that scouting with attribute masking on, so you can't see how good players are. Obviously, I scout all these players anyway. I'm going to mass scout them. I'd never sign a player without scouting them. And I don't filter by players by attributes. But it certainly speeds up this aspect of the game where I can look at players and make a bit more of a snap decision. Ronaldo Vieira is great, but for 10.5 million, I think we can do better. I'll tell you what we'll do. Insert column, asking price. Where's asking price? There it is. Then sort by this instead, because there'll be some players who are asking prices are way below what their actual kind of value is in game. So it's kind of useful to have. Ibrahima Sissoko, I mean, he has 16 long shots, which I love, but he's not that great. I want someone who's going to come into the team and be a long-term option. Because a lot of these players have been scouted. The other position we're looking at is attacking left mid. I always like to look at this stuff nice and early just to minimise the risk that you miss out. There's nothing worse than that when you just miss out on a potential player. Diatta would be a pretty cool signing, although he's played not a lot of football for Atalanta, and he is now 25, Jack. Jack, you are entering Season 5 of a save game here. Jesse Lingard at Lille. I can't do that one. I cannot do that one. I mean, Reece Nelson is interesting, especially valued at 15 million, but he's not very good. He's not very good also. Let's get a few scout reports on some of the players towards the top here, just so we have a rough idea of what's going on. So far, I'm very, very underwhelmed. How good's a Poku? Garbage. The other thing that's worth looking at, I suppose, is players with contracts expiring in the next few months. I've not really looked at players like this just because I didn't know where we were going to be. There are some seasons where, come January, I'm looking for all the players with contracts expiring and making moves right away. I didn't do that this year just because I wasn't sure exactly where we were going to be at. Like Danny Carvajal is available. He could be a really good squad player and a really good shooter. He's got 16 natural fitness. His physicals might drop off a little bit, but he's perfectionist. He's 32. The kind of player who I'd love to just bring in on a 1-year deal. And he doesn't even want to join me. I feel slightly offended. Have our scouts found anyone good here with contracts expiring in 3 months? Robert Hartug. I mean, it's all these youngsters in. Oh, Juan Benitez's contract was expiring. I didn't even realise that. I guess the 2.7 million is compensation that might have to be paid. Loftus-Cheek is available, but I already know Loftus-Cheek is injury prone. I've been there. I've done that. I've got the postcard. I've been hurt before. I mean, early thoughts are that it could be a quite busy window of looking for players. I mean, sort by reputation. So Carvajal's up there. Rodrigo is wanted by a team in Qatar. Could I take Rodrigo for a year? Could he play on the left wing for me? Is that wise? I like to have a bit of a natural bias towards domestic players in whichever country I'm managing in. So obviously at the moment, I do have a bias towards getting in more Spanish players if possible. Okay, I'm going to be honest. I am very, very underwhelmed by what's on offer here. I mean, is there anyone with a contract status expired who's good? I mean, this would be unexpected. I mean, Aguero? Don't do it, Jack. Don't do it. But it's Aguero. Look, Jack, he's 35. I'm going to be honest, there's not too many players here who are particularly jumping out at me as players that we absolutely need to sign. Apparently half of Jamaica's available on freeze as well, which is a bit bizarre. No, I could go for Aguero. I shouldn't. I don't need Sergio Aguero, age 35. Oh, dear, what am I doing? Okay, so those 2 players that I bid on with the release clauses, they have had their offers accepted. I can't justify 2 million on Beck. I'm sorry, mate. Trigo, on the other hand, for 300k, I think it's probably worth going in for him. So we'll see how much he wants to have. I mean, for £6,500, obviously the release clause being mandatory in Spain is always annoying, but if we lock it in at a higher price and renegotiate, he's probably not going to be playing in the first team this year. I mean, that goes without saying. I don't want to have a guy like this in the first team, but he's got good natural physicals. His mentals aren't too bad either. Great passing, great vision. Could be a really good deep line playmaker, to be fair, because he's got the balance for it. He's inconsistent, which would normally be a red flag, but I think for 325k, I can kind of stomach that and just go for him. I mean, it's only the 22nd of May. I think with previous episodes of transfer specials, we've started them in July. I also think with today's video, I've not cut things up as much. I think for tomorrow's transfer special, we'll try and get through things a bit more. I'll be more selective with what I talk about. But sometimes it's just nice to sit here and just talk continuously for an extended period of time about everything on my mind. And hopefully, you know, there's some useful nuggets of knowledge dropped here and there. Hualdro has extended his loan for another year. So that's really, really good. I mean, it's the end of next season. He can improve significantly. Hasn't actually improved that much as of late, which is a bit of a shame. But he was a big part of our first team last year. Of course, Pablo Torre has still got a year left on his loan. Could we extend it by another year? I mean, look, we should just ask. You don't get anything in life unless you ask. But we have got him on loan for at least 1 more year. I don't think, and I could be wrong here, but I don't think Bayern can recall him from his loan because it was part of his transfer agreement. Okay, they've rejected 3.8 million for Domingos, but now Domingos is unhappy. He's actually listed as their key player. I would have seen him earlier, actually, when we were looking at the other Toulouse youngster. So they got relegated, did they? Wow, they finished bottom. Amiens have also gone down. I mean, they've got Lucas Romero in their team. He's not very good. Sochaux, and they've got Benat Prodos as their key man. I mean, he's on loan from Athletic. He doesn't look as good. They do, Sochaux, produce some good youngsters. Let's get a scout report on this guy. Why not? It's always worth, I suppose, looking through teams like this, just seeing who might potentially be going up and down. Of course, within leagues that we loaded, it's more easy to see the teams who are going up and down and just have a look through them. For example, Mafra, I think they're the team that young Brazilian guy was playing for that we looked at previously, who came up in our kind of recommendations. Yeah, it's always worth just looking through these players. Even if I was playing with a tribute masking on, with a lot of these players, I would just get a scout report on them, especially if you've got, you know, the budget to do so. There's no harm in just scouting as many players as possible. in this kind of scenario to see what's available. Like, this guy looks really, really good. Really, really good. 15 years old. Mentals are good. Super well-rounded. His heading and marking need to improve a tad, but having better tackling is pretty nice because, of course, you can't train tackling in Football Manager as an individual focus. So if I'm looking at centre-backs, one of the things I'd look at straight away and be looking for is if they have bad defending on the whole, but their tackling is good. Marking and positioning, they can be trained. Bundesliga. Who's going down from the Bundesliga? Würzburger Kickers. Never heard of them. Gonna be honest. Who's their key man? They've got Harlas. They've also got Lucas Mai. Does he start at Bayern Munich? And look at, okay, he does. He joined them on a free. He's just been relegated with them. Like, he could be a pretty useful squad player. He's got an active relegation release clause of 2.2 million. I kind of want to look through the rest of their team, although I'm not familiar with this team. I guess they've been promoted in the save game. So we'll just insert active relegation release clause. You can see here the players who have them. They've got this guy, Marcus Monteiro, who has a release clause of 11 million. Obviously, that's a little bit steep. Probably not going to go for that. But just looking through these players, just looking at who's got release clauses, like Bauer here doesn't look that bad either. Like, they've got quite a good defence. Did they go down not conceding many? I mean, they lost 23 and won 3. It's not great. And then Dusseldorf won 2 games in 34. Pedro Diaz was their key man. I mean, he's young, he's Spanish, he hasn't got a relegation release clause. Dusseldorf, have any of your players got release clauses? Jonas Eggstein does. A 3.5 million, but I don't need an Eggstein. Not today. I had a look over in Serie A, but there wasn't anyone there who looked particularly good. Over in the Premier League, Birmingham, Crystal Palace and Swansea have gone down. Have you guys got anyone? I mean, the issue with the Premier League is that players just have bigger release clauses and bigger contracts, which makes them a lot less accessible for the likes of us. But have you got anyone? Palace, active relegation release clauses. Fionn Mooney has one. I mean, the thing is, these release clauses, they're not as nice and small as the other ones that we saw previously. The other team who went down is Swansea. Swansea, a team who I've declined to manage twice in Football Manager. Have you got anyone good? I mean, you have, but even their worst players, I say they're worst, but they're not really the worst players, but the kind of players with the cheapest active relegation release clause players, their kind of release clause is still more than my transfer budget for the year, which is a challenge. Rodrigo Fernandez wants a new contract to reflect his importance to the team. He hasn't got the memo, has he, that he's going to be dropped from the first team this coming year? Machedo, can you solve it? Of course you can. Machedo should be a hostage negotiator. He's bloody good at this kind of talking people down stuff. A loan offer for Torre's been accepted. Yo, I didn't know if they would do that. Does that mean we've got him for another year? I just keep Pablo Torre forever. We'll sell him to them and then just loan him back for the next 5 years. And then when his contract runs out, we'll sign him back for free. I've got it all figured out. I mean, that's really big for us. Hopefully they won't recall him at any point. Also, I don't think we're having to pay any of his wages. I mean, to be fair, we're giving him regular first-team football that Bayern can't, and we're just going to develop him for them. I mean, that could end up being some of the best transfer business that we do. How's Domingos handling the fact that these bids are being rejected? How are you feeling about it, mate? He wants to move to a bigger club, and he said that publicly. We'll assign a scout. It doesn't really matter what scout here, because we've already scouted him. But we're just going to assign a scout, and we're going to just assign an analyst to go and stalk him for a little bit. Just to kind of really emphasise the interest that we have got in him, to hopefully sway him to want to join us. He says he wants to go to a bigger club. We're giants. Also, Bruno Trigo. I think I'm going to sign this guy for 325k. It's a drop in the ocean, even for us with our lack of money. First transfer done. It's not even the end of May yet. We're getting our business done early at the moment. Okay, the Pablo Torre loan is going to be extended for that extra year, which is really, really good, if I might say so myself. So I think it's now going to be to 2026. Is that correct? It is correct. So yeah, we've got him for another 2 years. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got him. Domingos, I have upped the offer again. They've rejected it again. I'm going to just cancel the offer now. Break off negotiations. Hopefully, you know, give him a couple of days to stew and kick up a fuss and try and force this move to us. If he wants to come to us, I won't make him. But we are, of course, trying to do as much as we can to drive that interest. We're also getting the scout reports here for all those defensive mids that I just set the scouts to take a look at. Having had a quick cursory glance through them, I'm not sure there's going to be too many who are good for us, although Dennis Geiger is rated very, very highly by our staff. I think that might just be a bad scout report more than anything else. I certainly would not be giving him an 81 on the recommendation charts. Ronaldo Vieira is good. Diat has popped up as well as a winger. Timothy Weah playing for Lille. He's not developed a great deal in this save game, and he's injury prone. Get him out my face. Samu Castillo playing for Fiorentina. That estimated wage cost is a little out of our budget. Denis Suarez playing for Napoli. I didn't even notice him. Oh my word. I thought Denis Suarez would be much better than that. He is awful. Draxler, Martins. I mean, all these players are great, but they are a little on the older side. I do think Carvajal could be a really good squad player at fullback, but he doesn't want to join us. He says that we've not got the status in the game. I mean, let's try trialing him. Get him in on trial for a week. Convince him. It's like, just give us a chance. Return my texts. We'll go on one date together. If you hate us, you don't have to come with us. You don't have to commit. Just give me a chance, Carvajal. So guys, I actually think I'm going to wrap up today's episode here. As I said, I think we're going to do a transfer special more akin to the previous ones tomorrow. Today's was a lot more kind of talkative, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, but there's a lot less for me to cut out in between because there was just lots of exciting stuff to talk about, and hopefully it gives you a little bit of an insight into how I approach my squad management, especially at this point in pre-season. It's a little bit earlier than when we've done the previous few transfer specials. I've quite enjoyed this, so maybe we'll do this every year. Can I really pull off 2 transfer specials every year? Kind of one like this where we lay the groundwork, and then the next one is more the doing. I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this, and I'm sure we'll come up with some kind of formula that gets the best of both worlds. I've had a lot of fun with this, so if you have enjoyed it, drop a like on it. Let me know that you want to see more. Can I call this a transfer? We've made a transfer. It is a transfer special. I'm going to claim it. Right, gang. I'm going to wrap things up for today. If you've got any feedback with regards to today's video, please do leave it down below. And until next time, thank you so much for watching. It is me, Jack, and I'll see you guys in a bit. I'm out.